Shalom. First and foremost, call halal, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakwadash. That's all praises to the Heavenly Father. In the name of His only begotten Son, in the name of the Holy Spirit, in the ancient Paleo Hebrew tongue. And double honors to our teachers, the beloved apostles and elders at Great Millstone who teach and rule well. And peace, blessings, and salutations to the hopeful elect. Akim pushing this word and truth and sincerity across the four winds of the earth, as well as the men, women, and children alike, the believers. Shalom. It's your brother Karai Tazar coming with a quick lesson out of Juan Ratazar, Lord willing. I pray that it's edifying, and it's entitled The Plague of Darkness.
All right, the box just arrived. And honestly, I've been waiting for this one.
It's fair use.
Well, the wind continues to be our top story and the power outages that go along with it. We're tracking the numbers live for you here throughout the morning, and we are starting to see some good news. So when we started the newscast at 6 o'clock this morning, it was almost 81,000 people that were still without power. We're down to 79,000, so things are ticking in the right direction, but obviously still a huge impact to a lot of people in the community. You can see where the power outages are concentrated on the outage map on the right-hand side of your screen. One of the places still without power here this morning is Golden. Let's get straight out to Fox 31's Kasha Carriage tracking conditions. And Kasha, it's so dark there you had to bring your own lights.
Yeah, it felt like we were lighting up all of downtown Golden here, Ashley. The police have been driving by us like, where are these lights coming from? Thankfully, there are, so we're happy to help out here. But we're hearing that a large number of these customers may be restored power tomorrow at noon and others by Monday. So we're expecting likely another at least 24 hours of these people without their power. Let's get you zoomed in though. The sun is slowly starting to come up here, and I mean the wind really just kicked up here. It was actually quite pleasant during the 6 o'clock hour, and it feels like the temperature dropped and it's really windy now. But you can see we have the Welcome to Golden sign, which is, like you mentioned, being lit up by our lights actually. Improved from about 85,000 overnight. At one point, though, at its worst, the number across the state was at 200,000 customers without power. Now, the outages range from Loveland to Evergreen and even Georgetown to here in Golden. Hundreds of crews expected to inspect power lines and make repairs over the weekend. Widespread wind damage of did not happen that day back in December of 2021. As a reminder, always stay away from downed or damaged power lines. We're also noticing a lot of cars.
End time headlines. Self-driving. Matter of fact, let's get this other one first. ThePeople.com. San Francisco power outage leaves large majority of the city without lights. Causes self-driving cars to stall in the road. The video we just seen, that was talking about Colorado, Denver, but this is San Francisco. It says, we are working with the first responders and city officials on an outage in San Francisco affecting 130,000 customers. So we see that this is, it could be a precursor, like the apostles, elders, have been saying as well. This could be a sign for more to come, more of these events. And it's the same thing in the end time headlines. Let's get this video real quick.
Okay. If you're watching this morning, consider yourself lucky, as we are hearing that tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands now, are reporting outages nationwide across various cities throughout the United States.
Now, he is speaking of cell phone outages.
Cell phones are going down. Right now we're hearing that AT&T was the original one that was essentially just had a massive outage and people are unable to use their phones. They're stuck in SOS mode. However, now we're hearing that it is not just AT&T. New updates coming out in just the past half an hour that this is now starting to hit Verizon and T-Mobile users as well, as tens of thousands, we're hearing maybe now into the hundreds of thousands, are being affected. Now, this started happening this morning. We're hearing around 3:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it has been growing. And I'm looking at the charts, and it's exponentially going up as outages are happening. Now, at this time, we have no information as to why this is happening. They have not been able to find a source yet, and we have no information as to how long this is going to last. Just simply, if you are somebody that has a working cell phone or a working internet connection, consider yourself lucky. Now, for myself, if you're watching.
So it says San Francisco, Los Angeles, Houston, Atlanta, and Chicago cities impacted from cell phone network outage. So let's get a few precepts. This plague of darkness is what the Lord is sending upon the earth for sinners, for the wicked, 2/3 of our people, the Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, as well as the heathen, for their wickedness and their sin. And it's going to be horrifying for them. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 17, in the GNT. Terror strikes the Egyptians at night. It says, O Lord, your acts of judgment are marvelous and hard to explain. That is why people who had not been taught about them went astray. It says, when lawless people imagine that they had your holy nation in their power, and that's speaking of the wicked, so the so-called white man, the Edomites, chiefly being a chief among the heathen, pursuing to Psalms 83. They have us in their power. In their captivity, it says, they were themselves imprisoned in a long night of darkness. So when lawless people imagined that they had your holy nation in their power, they were themselves imprisoned in a long night of darkness. They lay in their own houses, shut off from your eternal care. Let's get a quick precept. Isaiah, come right back there. Joel chapter 3, verse 19. Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom shall be a desolate wilderness. And we know that America is spiritually Egypt. The back of the dollar bill with the pyramid, the different customs, such as the birthday that comes from Egypt, are celebrated here and kept here, as well as the ideologies and gods, false gods, idols, and of course this is the place of our captivity, just as ancient Egypt was. Pursuant to Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, the Lord brought us over here to Egypt on slave ships. It says, Egypt shall be, and this is speaking of this Egypt, not the ancient one. It says, Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom, which is synonymous to Edom because this is his chief place, Esau, Edom. And Edom shall be a desolate wilderness for the violence against the children of Judah. See, for the violence against the children of Judah, because they had shed innocent blood in their land. So this is why the Lord is sending these plagues upon Egypt. It says back in Wisdom of Solomon 17 and verse 3, they thought that their sins had been secret and unnoticed, shielded from view by a dark curtain of forgetfulness. But now They were horribly afraid, confused, and terrified by ghostly forms. Okay, it says by ghostly forms. Verse 4. For it says, not even the dark corners where they lay could protect them from fear. They were surrounded by horrible noises. Grim ghosts with gloomy faces appeared before their eyes. And this was in ancient Egypt. But now, right, it's finna come back. The Lord said in 2 Ezra 15, verse 11, he's going to send the plagues upon Egypt as before. Just like he sent the plagues in ancient Egypt, he's going to send them on this new spiritual Egypt. The same plagues. These plagues that we're reading. Isaiah 66 and verse 4. I also will choose their delusions and will bring their fears upon them, because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear. But they did evil before mine eyes and chose that in which I delighted not. So the Lord is finna bring delusions upon these people. And we know one of the definitions here is vexation. When you get it in the on Google, it says a misapprehension, a deception, a symptom of serious mental illness. The Lord is finna bug people out. He's finna scare and horrify people, torment them. Going back to Wisdom of Solomon 17 and verse, let's see. I'm going to read that again in verse 4. It says, they were surrounded by horrible noises. Grim ghosts with gloomy faces appeared before their eyes. No fire had power to give them light, and the brilliant stars could do nothing to relieve the deadly darkness. So the stars, the moon, even if you light a fire, it's not going to help give light. It says, there was only a dreadful fire lit by no human hand that shone on them, and in their terror they believed that the real world was even worse than the things they imagined. It says, verse 7, the illusions produced by their magic tricks were, right, whose magic tricks? Esau, starting with Esau Edom, who's in power, who has all this technology and AI, and they're doing witchcraft on the left-hand side. It says the illusions produced by their magic tricks were put to shame. So that it says, and all the wisdom they had boasted of came to nothing. Let's go to Isaiah 47 and verse 12. I'm going to start at verse 10. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness. Thou hast said, none seeth me. Thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. Because it's against the Holy Spirit, against the law, statutes, and commandments of the Heavenly Father, what these people are doing. It says, it hath perverted thee, and thou hast said in thy heart, I am, and none else beside me. You know, saying that they don't have to take heed and follow the Lord's word. They're in control. They're untouchable. They're the top. They're God. You know, they think that they're God. But it says, therefore shall evil come upon thee. Thou shalt not know from whence it riseth. And mischief shall fall upon thee. Thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries. wherein thou hast labored from thy youth, if so be that thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail. So it says, right, their sorceries, their magic, their witchcraft. It says, thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee, right? And save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. So the Lord is telling them, you know, you've been doing all this witchcraft, you've been working your magic in throughout the, you know, the over the nations, spreading it throughout the world. So if you think you can stand before what the plagues that I'm about to send upon the earth, go ahead and try. Stand on what you've been doing. But it says, let's go back to Wisdom of Solomon 7:17, because the Lord is finna send this. Verse 7, the illusions produced by their magic tricks were put to shame, and all the wisdom they had boasted of came to nothing. They had claimed they could drive away all the fears and illnesses of sick minds, right? Talking about the C-hip, right? The brain C-hip, as well as, you know, the wrist that goes in the wrist, the digital tag that they're gonna make mandatory pursuant to Revelation 13. You know, the MOT to the B, which they claim they're claiming that it heals, you know, the blind and gives the like paraplegic. You know, you can control things with your mind. It can heal, you know, the paralyzed and all these different things that they're saying. But it says again, they had claimed they could drive away all the fears and illnesses of sick minds, but now they themselves were sick with silly, groundless fears. You know, you got your warlocks and witches. You go to get your palm read and these different things. But it says they're going to be scared. It says even though nothing dangerous had actually happened, they were terrified by hissing snakes and animals advancing on them. So just in the darkness, when you can't see and you can hear these creatures, that's terrifying, and that's how it's going to be. It says, and so they died shaken with fear, afraid even to open their eyes, yet unable to keep them shut. And that's torment. That's what the Lord is bringing. Let's see. It says, verse 12, verse 11, wickedness is cowardly in itself and stands self-condemned. Someone with a guilty conscience will always imagine things to be worse than they really are. And that's how these people are going to be. That's the spirit that they're going to be in. They're going to be having a guilty conscience, knowing that the Lord is finna judge them. It says fear is nothing but the failure to use the help that reason gives. When you lack the confidence, which means faith, ultimately con meaning with, fidence meaning faith. It says when you lack the confidence, and we know faith comes by hearing the word, and this wisdom and knowledge is what's going to keep us stable. It says when you lack the confidence to rely on reason, you give in to the fears caused by ignorance. So we know, right? We're going to know why these things happen. We're going to be mentally stable because we have this knowledge and wisdom. Isaiah 33 verse 6. So let's go here real quick. Come back in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 19. The Lord Yahweh by his wisdom hath founded the earth. By understanding hath he established the heavens. By his knowledge the depths are broken up, and the clouds drop down the dew. My son, let not them depart from thine eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion, so shall they be life unto thy soul and grace to thy neck. It says, then shalt thou walk in thy way safely, and thy foot shall not stumble. When thou liest down, thou shalt not be afraid. Yea, thou shalt lie down, and sleep shall be sweet. So because we are not ignorant of what the Lord is about to do and why he's doing it, we're going to be mentally sound. We're going to have that confidence. We're going to be safe. The Lord's going to keep us safe. It says, verse 25, be not afraid of sudden fear, neither of the desolation of the wicked when it cometh. And that's what the Lord is bringing, the desolation of the wicked. It says, for the Lord Yahweh shall be thy comfort. And the Lord said, don't be afraid when judgment, the Lord starts judging these people. It says, for the Lord Yahweh shall be thy confidence, and shall keep thy foot from being taken. You see? So let's go back to Wisdom of Solomon 17. So these people are going to be terrified by this plague of darkness that the Lord is sending. He tells us he's sending the plagues like before. Again, 2 Ezra 15 and 11. As in ancient Egypt, he's going to send these plagues again. It says, and so they died, shaken with fear, afraid to open their eyes. Okay, let me jump down. Verse 14, all night long those people slept the same restless sleep, even though the night held no power over them, since it came from the powerless depths of the world of the dead. They were chased by hideous forms and lay paralyzed as they surrendered themselves to the sudden, unexpected fear that came over them. So hideous forms. Speaking about these creatures that the Lord is going to send, apparitions. Let me see. Salakia. When you read it in the KJV, it says, we were partly vexed, or it's not we, it says, they were partly vexed with monstrous apparitions, right? And partly fainted, their hearts failing them for the sudden fear, and not looked for came upon them. So let's go back here in the GNT. In verse 16, people would suddenly collapse and lie, locked in the chains of their own fear. Farmers, shepherds, and laborers out in the countryside were captured by the same inevitable fate and bound in the darkness by the same invisible chain. So it's going to be darkness everywhere in the country, in the city. It says, they were panic-stricken by the sighing of the wind, or by the singing of birds in the trees, or by the roaring of rushing water, or by the rumbling of falling rocks, or by the sound of unseen creatures running about, or by the savage roaring of wild animals, or by the echoes from the mountains. All right. So like it, bear with me. The echoes from the mountains. Now, when you go in the KJV, and you read verse 19, it says, or a terrible sound of stones cast down, or a running that could not be seen of skipping beasts, or a roaring voice of most savage wild beasts, or a rebounding echo from the hollow mountains. These things made them to swoon for fear. So let's get a precept real quick. Wisdom of Solomon 11, and then come right back. Wisdom of Solomon 11 and 15. It says, for the foolish devices of their wickedness, wherewith being deceived, they worshipped serpents void of reason and vile beasts. So because these people worship, animals and false gods, so it says, thou didst send a multitude of unreasonable beasts upon them for vengeance. And you hear the echoes bouncing off the mountains, and you could hear them through the woods. These loud screams and roars from these newly created creatures that the Lord has. It says, verse 16, that they might know, right? He's sending these creatures to terrorize people and take vengeance upon people. It says that they might know that wherewithal a man sinneth, by the same also shall he be punished. For the almighty hand that made the world without matter, that made the world of matter without form, wanted not means to send among them a multitude of bears or fierce lions or unknown wild beasts full of rage, newly created, breathing out either a fiery vapor or filthy scents of scattered smoke, because Leviathan, right, he breathes out fire. So it says, or filthy scents of scattered smoke, or shooting horrible sparks out of their eyes. And you got, Sasquatch and different creatures, cryptic creatures that are in the forest, underground, different things. It says, whereof not only the harm might dispatch them at once, but also the terrible sight utterly destroyed them. So the just the sight of these beasts and these creatures are going to make people give up the ghost and faint. Back in Wisdom of Solomon 17, I'm going to end it here. Verse 20, it says, in the full light of day, the rest of the world went about its business undisturbed. Only those people were covered by this heavy night, a foretaste of the darkness of death that was waiting for them. They were a burden to themselves that was even heavier than the darkness. So these people are going, and that's how you know it's talking about this place, because this place is comfort. Is full of comforts. It's full of convenient. Everything is convenient. People are so spoiled and dependent on technology and So when it's taken away suddenly like that, people are gonna just bug out even worse because it's such a drastic change from being able to be on your phone all day, having lights, to a sudden drastic change. Is going to be stressful to a lot of people, and that's going to cause people to just, bug out even more and freak out and panic and be fearful even more. Matter of fact, I want to end it with one real quick in the book of Exodus. Let's see. Exodus chapter 10. And verse 21. And the Lord Yahweh said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand toward heaven, right? This is when the Lord sent the plague of darkness upon ancient Egypt. It says, and the Lord Yahweh said unto Moses, and we know the scriptures say, Ecclesiastes, as it was, so shall it be, roughly paraphrasing. The Lord is gonna, do these things again. But it says, stretch out thine hand toward heaven, that there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. And Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days. Remember, they were chained in their own fear. They couldn't even. They were paralyzed with fear. It says, but all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. So what's going to make people be terrorized and just paralyzed with fear when the Lord sends this plague of darkness, and then what we just was reading, these sounds and these beasts and these creatures coming out, right? People are going to be shook. But it says, but all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. So the Lord is going to take care of his elect, right? So we don't have a reason to be fearful because we understand what's going on. We're not ignorant like everybody else. That's what's going to cause these other people to freak out. But that's the point. Lord willing, I pray this lesson was edifying, ending it giving all praise to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rahakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders at Great Millstone who teach and rule well, and peace, blessings, and salutations to the hopeful elect. Kwame Asherallah, Abba Soon, Shalom.